Hi guys, so today we will be discussing the endocrine system chapter 9, which is the first topic for your final term. So what is really endocrine system? So it is a second messenger system of the body. So we will find out why it is called the second messenger system of the body. So when we say endocrine, it is ductless. As we have discussed in chapter 1, we have two types of glands. We have the endocrine glands and our exocrine gland. And our exocrine gland are those that have ducts, while our endocrine glands are those without. Okay, so we have a chemical messenger here in endocrine system. This is the primary component of our endocrine system, which are called hormones. So they are released into the blood again because endocrine has no ducts. Okay, and hormones control several major processes like reproduction and growth and development. Reproduction, like those are estrogen and progesterone. Growth and development, like our growth hormones, mobilization of body defenses, maintenance of much of our homeostasis. We will discuss that endocrine system has positive and negative feedback mechanism. Okay, like that we have discussed on chapter 1. And regulation of metabolism, whether it's carbohydrate, lipids, or our proteins. So hormones are produced by specialized cells. We have discussed some of it, which we call a gland. So cells secrete hormones into extracellular fluid. Like I've said a while ago, endocrine system is ductless. Okay, blood transfer hormones to the target sites. And these hormones regulate activity of other cells. Kumbaga, kinokontrol nila yung iba nating cells. We have different types of hormones in our body that depends on its structure. The first one is the amino acid-based hormones, which is divided into three: proteins, peptides, and amides. Amino acid-based hormones can be dissolved in our plasma and body fluids, while our steroid-based hormones cannot be dissolved in our plasma and body fluids. They are made up of cholesterol. Another example is the prostaglandin, which is made from highly active lipids. One example of the steroid hormones are those that is so-called sex hormones. So sex hormones cannot be dissolved easily in plasma and other body fluids. So it affects greatly our brain activity as well as our nervous system. One example of it is those that can be observed in women. So sexual hormonal fluctuations during specific reproductive stages of women's life are related to an increased susceptibility of women to develop mood disorders as premenstrual dysphoric disorder, postpartum depression, yung mga panganak pa lang, and perimenopausal depressions. So, mechanism of our hormone actions. Hormones affect only certain tissues or organ. Ang tawag sa organ na yon is our target cells or target organs. Target cells or target organs must have specific protein receptors. So, yung protein receptors na yon, nasa surface yon ng ating target cell or target organ. Nagsisilbi siyang antena na nasa surface kung saan pwedeng kumabit ang hormone. Once si hormone ay na-detect ng receptor na yon at kumabit na siya sa ibabaw ng mga cell na yon, kaya na niyang i-control yung response and activity of that certain cell or target organ. So what are the effects caused by hormones to its target organs or target cell? First is it changes the plasma permeability or electrical state of our target cell. So, kaya niyang i-open ng mas maraming ibang channels or kung gated channels man yan para mas makapasok yung mga electrolytes and other chemicals in our body na gustong pumasok sa target cell na yon. Synthesis of proteins such as enzyme. As we know, ang enzyme ay nagpapabilis ng chemical reaction ng ating katawan. So, maaari niyang pabilisin yung chemical reaction by synthesizing enzymes. Activation or inactivation of enzymes and stimulation of mitosis. So, like one hormone called cytokinin, kaya niyang i-initiate yung mitosis or yung division, yung pag-divide ng ating mga cell. So, what is the action of the steroid hormone to our target cell? So, first, it will diffuse in the plasma membrane. Our plasma membrane, as we all know, is consists of our nonpolar tails and our polar heads. So, it can diffuse to our plasma membrane. it will enter the nucleus, the control center of our cell, and it will bind to a specific protein within that nucleus. From the specific protein, it will bind to the specific site of the DNA, and then it will activate the genes that result in synthesis of new protein. So here is the demonstration of the steroid hormone action. First, the steroid hormone is seen outside the plasma membrane of the target cell, and then it will diffuse to our plasma membrane. Directly, it will go to our nucleus, which is the purple area in the demonstration. It will bind to specific proteins, and then it will bind to specific site in our DNA. It will alter or activate certain genes that will control the generation or creation of different kinds of protein or enzymes in our body, which is the needed proteins or enzymes in our body. Next is the non-steroid hormone action. So these are the protein and amino-based hormones. So unlike our steroid hormone, it will not enter the cell. It will control the target cell from outside or in the surface. Since we have a membrane receptor or the antenna on in the surface of our target cell, our non-steroid hormone will bind to that membrane receptor, and then it will set off a series of reactions that will activate the enzyme. Again, enzymes speed up the reaction, the chemical reaction. So it will then catalyze or initiate a reaction that produce a second messenger molecule. So it will cascade and create a second messenger molecule. It will then oversee additional intracellular changes to promote a specific response needed by our body, whether it is a positive feedback or negative feedback response. So this is a demonstration of how a non-steroid hormone action works. So first, we have a non-steroid hormone, which is our first messenger. It will attach to the receptor protein, the violet one, in the plasma membrane of the target cell. So the model here is lock and key. Usually, the space of the receptor protein is the same size as the non-steroid hormone. It will then activate the enzyme near it to produce or catalyze or produce a secondary messenger. In this case, the secondary messenger is the CAMP or the cyclic adenosine monophosphate. This secondary messenger inside that cell will then produce an effect on cellular functions such as glycogen breakdown. So the control of hormone release. So it can be positive or negative feedback mechanism, but the hormone level in the blood are maintained by a negative feedback mechanism, meaning kapag konti na lang ang certain level of that hormone in our blood, magre-release ang ating katawan ng more hormone na mababa sa blood. Kapag sumusobra na ang level na yon sa ating katawan, babawasan ng ating katawan ang pag-release ng certain hormones na yon. So, stimulus or low hormone levels in the blood triggers the release of more hormones. So, hormone release stops once the appropriate level in the blood is reached. So, say for example, the hormone insulin. Kumain ka ng kumain ng matatamis or carbohydrates, and then tumataas ang glucose mo sa blood. Magre-release ang katawan mo ng certain hormone that we call insulin para bawasan ang certain level ng sugar mo sa iyong blood. So, that insulin is consumed habang binabawasan niya yung glucose na yon. So, bumababa yung insulin level mo sa iyong blood. Madidetect siya ng katawan natin na bumababa ang insulin level mo sa iyong blood. So, magpuproduce siya ng mas maraming insulin. Once na normalize na ang level ng glucose mo sa iyong blood, hindi na magpuproduce ang katawan mo ng insulin kasi hindi na siya kailangan. Hindi na siya appropriate na dagdagan pa. So, what is the hormonal stimuli of endocrine glands? So, endocrine glands are activated by other hormones. So, anong nilalabas ng endocrine glands? Another hormones. So, yung endocrine gland, again, i-stimulate siya ng isang hormone to produce another type of hormones. While our humoral stimuli of endocrine gland ay nakadepende sa level ng chemical na nasa blood mo. Okay? Ang blood mo, halimbawa, ay mataas ang glucose. Magre-release ang katawan mo ng hormone na insulin. Ganon ang kanyang stimuli. Unlike kay endocrine, yung certain hormone na yon, may certain hormone na mag-activate sa endocrine gland to produce another hormone. Dito sa humoral, nakadepende siya sa level ng chemical na nakadepende sa hormone na yon. So another example of a stimuli is our neural stimuli of our endocrine gland. When we say neural, there's an involvement of our nervous system. So the nerve impulses stimulates the hormone release. Most are under control of the sympathetic nervous system or our fight and flight nervous system. So say for example, or one example of this is the adrenaline, which is produced in our medulla of the adrenal gland. There are two hormones in the medulla of the adrenal gland. One is the adrenaline and the noradrenaline. Other names of it is the epinephrine and the norepinephrine. So collectively, these two are called catecholamines. So they are released when there is a nerve impulses, usually under control of our sympathetic nervous system. Ito yung adrenaline rush. So we have different types of endocrine gland in our body. So these are the major endocrine glands or organs in our body. The pineal gland, hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland are both located in our brain. The thyroid gland and the parathyroid gland are close to each other. We have the thymus gland. We have, for the body defenses, our adrenal gland, which is, dyan ang galing yung sinasabi ko kanina na adrenaline. We have the pancreas, which produce insulin, glycogen, and other hormones. We have the ovary that produce the estrogen and progesterone, and the testes for male, which produce the testosterone. Let's start with our pituitary gland. So it is the size of a grape and it is called the master gland of our endocrine gland. So it hangs by a stalk. That stalk is called infundibulum from the hypothalamus. So it is protected by the sphenoid bone, which we have discussed in our skeletal system, and it has two functional lobes. It has anterior pituitary, which is glandular tissue, and our posterior pituitary, which is our nervous tissue. Anterior pituitary is also called your pars distalis, and your posterior pituitary is also called your pars nervosa. In between these two, there's a certain part that we call pars intermedia. This is the hormones of the anterior pituitary. So we have 6 anterior pituitary hormones. 2 of them affects the non-endocrine targets, meaning they affect directly the target tissue or the target organ. Those 2 is called our growth hormone and our prolactin. The growth hormone affects the muscle and our bone, while the prolactin affects the mammary gland. The 4 stimulates other endocrine gland, meaning i-stimulate nila yung ibang endocrine gland sa ating katawan to produce other types of hormone. This is called the trophic hormones. So they are the thyrotrophin or the TSH, the adrenocorticotrophin or the ACTH, the follicular stimulating hormone or the FSH, and the luteinizing hormone or the LH. Characteristic of all anterior pituitary hormone is they are protein. As we have discussed a while ago, nonsteroid hormone has a receptor on the target organ. Okay, so protein is a nonsteroid hormone, and all of the hormones in the anterior pituitary are proteins. They act through secondary messenger system. Most of them affect the body in a negative feedback mechanism. They are regulated by hormonal stimuli. As we have discussed a while ago, we have 3 types of our stimuli: our hormonal, our humoral, and our neural stimuli. So this anterior pituitary hormone is hormonal stimuli by nature, meaning may isang hormone na i-stimulate ang anterior pituitary gland to produce this 6 anterior pituitary hormone, one of the 6 anterior pituitary hormones. These are the hormones of the anterior pituitary. Again, 2 of them stimulate the non-endocrine gland, which is the bone and the muscle, and the mammary glands. This 2 is called growth hormone, and the prolactin. Four of them stimulates another endocrine gland, which is the FSH, or the follicle stimulating hormone, and the luteinizing hormone, which affects the testes or the ovaries. Another is the thyrotrophic hormone, or the TSH, that affects the thyroid gland to produce um, T3 and T4 hormones. Okay, last is the adrenocorticotropic hormone, or the ACTH, that affects the adrenal cortex, which will then produce another types of hormone depending on what is needed by our body. So we have growth hormone, one of the hormone of our anterior pituitary gland that affect the non-endocrine gland, which is the skeletal muscles and our long bones. So it is generally a metabolic hormone. It causes amino acid to be built into a protein and causes fats to be broken down for a source of energy. I know that glucose is a source of energy, but sometimes the fats in our body is converted if not enough glucose is taken by our body. So functions of other anterior pituitary hormone, which is the prolactin, adrenocorticotropic hormone, and the thyroid stimulating hormones. Prolactin stimulates and maintains milk production following childbirth. The function of prolactin in males is still unknown. There might be uh, there might be a problem when the prolactin is very excessive in the blood. There might be a tumor in our pituitary gland, which then can a high amount of prolactin can cause an excessive milk production or a milk production in men and in women who are not pregnant or breastfeeding. So adrenocorticotropic hormone regulates the endocrine activity of the adrenal cortex. So more discussion of the adrenal cortex will be discussed in the discussion of the adrenal cortex. Thyroid stimulating hormone then influence the growth and activity of the thyroid gland. More discussion of the hormone stimulated in the thyroid gland in the discussion of the thyroid gland. Next, we have the FSH and LH. Together, they are called the gonadotrophic hormones. So they regulate the hormonal activity of our gonads. So first is the follicle stimulating hormone, or our FSH. It stimulates the follicle development in our ovaries. It stimulates the sperm development in. Next gonadotrophic hormone is called the luteinizing hormone, or the LH. So its function is that it triggers the ovulation in female and causes the rupture of the follicle to become the corpus luteum. So it stimulates the testosterone production in males, and it is referred to as the interstitial cell stimulating hormone, or the ICSH. More discussion of the gonadotrophic hormones will be discussed on our reproductive system discussion. We are done with our different types of anterior pituitary hormone. Next, we discuss the pituitary hypothalamus relationship. Release of hormones is controlled by releasing and inhibiting hormones produced by the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus produces two hormones that are transported to neurosecretory cells of the posterior pituitary. The part of the pituitary that is functionally connected to the hypothalamus is the posterior pituitary. That's why it is called the neurohypophysis. The stalk that connects them is called the infundibulum, or the pituitary stalk. The posterior pituitary is not strictly an endocrine gland but does release hormone controlled by our hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is connected to the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland by means of special portal blood system. Moreover, the hypothalamus is directly connected to the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland by means of our infundibulum, or our pituitary stalks. Therefore, the hypothalamus regulates the function of the pituitary gland. So we have discussed the anterior pituitary hormone. Let us discuss the posterior pituitary hormones. So our posterior pituitary hormone release oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. Again, it is released and stored only in posterior pituitary, but it is produced in the hypothalamus. First, we have the oxytocin. Oxytocin stimulates contraction of the uterus during labor, and it causes milk ejection, while antidiuretic hormone can inhibit urine production in large amount causes vasoconstriction, leading to increased blood pressure. Antidiuretic hormone is also called the vasopressin. Antidiuretic hormone has a huge effect in our kidney function and our blood pressure. These are the hormones of the posterior pituitary. So we have the ADH that affects the kidney tubules, and we have the oxytocin that affects the mammary gland and the uterine muscle. Again, this hormone is just released and stored in our posterior pituitary, but they are produced in our hypothalamus. Let us discuss the other endocrine gland that is found in our body. First, we have the thyroid gland. It is found at the base of the throat. It consists of two lobes and is connected by a part that we call isthmus. It produces two hormones, which is the thyroid hormone and the calcitonin. As you can see, the thyroid in this picture, it has two lobes, the left and right lobe, and it is connected by what we call an isthmus. So we have the thyroid hormone. Again, there are two types of hormone produced in our thyroid gland. We have the thyroid hormone and our calcitonin. The thyroid hormone is a major metabolic hormone. It is composed of two active iodine-containing hormone, which we call T4 or thyroxine, which is secreted by the thyroid follicle. The other one is triiodothyronine or T3, which is a conversion of T4 at a target tissue. Together, this hormone regulates your body temperature, metabolism, and or your heart rate. Most of the T3 in your body binds to protein. Overproduction of your thyroid hormone can cause hyperthyroidism, and underproduction of this hormone can cause hypothyroidism. Next hormone is our calcitonin. So it decreases the blood calcium level by causing its deposition on bone. It is antagonistic to our parathyroid hormone, meaning kabaligtaran ng action ni calcitonin si parathyroid hormone. Kung dinidecrease sa ang blood calcium level ni calcitonin, nag-i-increase naman ang blood calcium level kapag si parathyroid hormone ang nagwo-work. So itong si calcitonin is produced by C cells or what we call parafollicular cell. So other action of the calcitonin is that it inhibits the activity of osteoclasts, which are the cells responsible of breaking down bone. Again, in our bone, there's a lot of calcium deposits. So if osteoclast continues, it will release more calcium to our blood. If the calcitonin inhibits the activity of the osteoclast or the breaking down of bone, no calcium will be released in the blood. So parathyroid glands is a tiny masses on the posterior of the thyroid. So nakadikit si parathyroid gland sa posterior ng ating thyroid gland. So it secretes parathyroid hormone. Again, as we have discussed a while ago, parathyroid hormone is antagonistic to the action of your calcitonin. Parathyroid hormone has three main actions. First, that it stimulates the osteoclast to remove calcium from the bone. Again, osteoclast is bone breaking. So our bone is a deposit of calcium. Once the bone is broken, more calcium will be released in the blood. Second action is that it stimulates the kidney and the intestine to absorb more calcium. And the third action is it raises the calcium level in our blood. The parathyroid hormone works together with the vitamin D. Take note, vitamin D is a hormone. It is created in your kidney. So it is a major role in maintaining and controlling the concentration of calcium in the blood. So it is very vital for the development of your strong bones. The body makes vitamin D in a chemical reaction that occurs when the sunlight hits the skin. This reaction produces cholecalciferol, and the liver convert it to calcidiol. The kidney then convert the substance to calcitriol, which is an active form of the hormone in the body. Next, we have the adrenal glands. So the adrenal gland sits on the top of the kidneys. So there are two parts of this gland. We have the cortex, which is the outer glandular region in three layers, and the medulla, which is the inner neural tissue region. The three layers of cortex are zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and the zona reticularis. Each zone is responsible for producing specific hormone. Zona glomerulosa is the outer part next to capsule. Zona fasciculata is the middle part and zona reticularis is the inner part of the cortex. Next to zona reticularis is our medulla. So the first zone, which is the outer zone next to your capsule, is the zona glomerulosa. It produces a hormone which are mineralocorticoids, mainly aldosterone. So it is produced in the outer adrenal cortex. It regulates mineral content in the blood, water, and electrolyte balance. It works together with your ADH or your antidiuretic hormone released by your posterior pituitary gland. The target organ of this hormone is your kidney. The production stimulated by renin and aldosterone. Production inhibited by atrial natriuretic peptide. Your atrial natriuretic peptide is also known as your atrial natriuretic factor. They are produced in the heart, specifically the cardiac atria. So it maintains and regulates the blood pressure most prominently through their activity in the kidney to promote excretion of water and sodium. Next hormone of your adrenal cortex, specifically in your zona fasciculata, is your glucocorticoids. They are the cortisone and the cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormones. Cortisol, when used in medication, is known as your hydrocortisone. What are their actions? So they are produced in the middle layer of your adrenal cortex or your zona fasciculata. They promote normal cell metabolism. They help resist long-term stressors, and they are released in response to the increased blood level of your ACTH, which is a trophic hormone released in your anterior pituitary gland. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone. It increases the sugar or glucose in the bloodstream. It enhances your brain's use of glucose and increases the availability of the substance that repairs the tissue. Cortisol also curbs function that would be non-essential or detrimental in the fight or flight situation. In most people, cortisol levels are highest in the morning when they wake up and lowest around midnight. Your body also pumps out excess cortisol when you're anxious or under intense stress, which can affect your health if the levels stay too high for too long. An abnormal increase in your cortisol level is called Cushing syndrome, while a decrease in your cortisol level is called Addison disease. Your last part of your adrenal cortex or your inner layer is called your zona reticularis. So it produces sex hormones. So they are the androgens for male and some estrogens for female. The inner layer of your adrenal gland is called the adrenal medulla. It produces two similar hormones which is collectively called catecholamines. So these are the epinephrine or the adrenaline or the norepinephrine or your noradrenaline. These hormones prepare the body to deal with short-term stress. This demonstration is the role of the hypothalamus and adrenal gland in the stress response. So in short-term stress, you have an increase in heart rate, an increase in blood pressure, then your liver converts glycogen to glucose and releases glucose to the blood. Dilation of the bronchioles, changes in blood from patterns leading to increased alertness and decreased digestive and kidney activity. It increases also your metabolic rate. That's why when you are stressed, sometimes you crave for food because your metabolic activity is increased. Moving on to our next endocrine gland, the pancreas, specifically the islet of Langerhans or the pancreatic islet. The pancreas is a mixed gland as we have discussed in chapter 1. It is both endocrine and exocrine. Outside the islet of Langerhans is the exocrine function of the pancreas. So it has an acinar cells that produce digestive enzymes, while in the islet of Langerhans, it contains beta cells, alpha cells, and delta cells. The beta cells produce the insulin that allows glucose to cross the plasma membrane. Insulin decreases glucose level in the blood. while alpha cells produces glucagon that increases glucose level in the blood by allowing the glucose to enter the blood. Somatostatin is produced by your delta cell. Somatostatin inhibit insulin and your glucagon. The islet of Langerhans is demonstrated by the pink cells in this demonstration, while the purple cells are the exocrine cells of the pancreas. They are the acinar cells that produce digestive enzyme. Inside the pancreatic islets or the islet of Langerhans, it contains beta, alpha, and delta cells. Next is the pineal gland, which is found in the third ventricles of the brain. It is found in the deep part of your brain. It secretes your melatonin, so it helps establish the body's wake and sleep cycle and may have other as yet unsubstantiated function. This is a nice to know facts. It is described by Rene Descartes as a seat of the soul. And it is located at the center of the brain. So the main function of the pineal gland is to receive information about the state of light-dark cycle from the environment and convey this information, produce and secrete the hormone melatonin. Next gland is our thymus. It is located posterior to the sternum. It is largest in infant and children at habang lumalaki tayo, lumiliit ang ating thymus. It produces the hormone thymosin, matures some type of white blood cell and important in developing the immune system. So more discussion of thymus will be tackled on your immune system. Again, our thymus is both endocrine and for our body defense. Ovaries and testes will be discussed in the reproductive system, but the hormones that is produced in the ovaries is estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is produced by Graafian follicle or the placenta. It stimulates the development of the secondary female characteristics, mature female reproductive organ. It helps prepare the uterus to receive a fertilized egg, helps maintain pregnancy, and prepare the breast to produce milk together with your prolactin. Next one is your progesterone. It is produced by your corpus luteum. It acts with estrogen to bring about the menstrual cycle. It also helps in the implantation of an embryo in the uterus. Next one is the hormone that is produced by your testes, which is testosterone. Interstitial cell of testes are hormone producing. They produce several androgen. One of it is testosterone. It is the most important androgen produced by our testes. They are responsible for adult male secondary sex characteristics similar to your estrogen in female. It promotes growth and maturation of the male reproductive system and it is required for the sperm cell production. Again, aside from our major endocrine gland, we have other hormone-producing tissues and organ. These are parts of the small intestine, parts of the stomach, kidneys, heart, and many other areas that have scattered endocrine cells. The placenta during pregnancy also have an endocrine function. It produces hormones that maintain the pregnancy. Some hormones play a part in the delivery of the baby. So, this placenta produces HCG or the human chorionic gonadotrophin hormone in addition to the estrogen, progesterone, and other hormones that it produces. So the developmental aspect of the endocrine system, most endocrine organs operate smoothly until old age. So yung menopause is brought about by lack of efficiency of the ovaries. And problem associated with reduced estrogens are common like mood swings and growth hormone production declines with age. Many endocrine gland decreases output with age. That is all for endocrine gland. Please read the tables in your book, your laboratory, and your lecture book. Thank you.